And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you, along with Cheryl Jones. We're taking calls with Cheryl this hour here on Coast to Coast. Cheryl, can you believe we're rolling into now September already? Jeez.
Oh, where does the time fly? Next week, Congress reconvenes, and that's when Congressman Bassett said that his letter that he had sent to the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community asking for names of the people that whistleblower David Grush had mentioned that he would have to reveal only in a secure environment. And so he, along with other members of Congress on the Oversight Committee, sent a letter to the Inspector General asking for those names. So I think this thing is going to continue whether we see it outside on the surface of an open public hearing or not, because the seeds have been planted, and I don't think that they're going to let up until we get more information and some more of these people, like we talked about, who have made history and are still around. There's Captain Salas. There's Steve Bassett, who has been a lifelong advocate, and he put together all those citizen hearings over the X conferences over the years, and then the citizen hearing, he produced that. And all of those conferences with MUFON and everyone involved in the field brought in all of these wonderful experts from all over the world. So, if we don't tap those resources, we're reinventing the wheel in so many cases. And that's what I get from a lot of people in the UFO community, that they're very frustrated from that point. But I was so glad that Representative Burchett was really on board with trying to pursue that avenue.
Yeah, me too. Did you still retain your meteorologist credentials?
Yes, I do. But I charge for my forecast. Do you need one?
No, I'm free.
Oh, okay. Yes, I do. I mean, I'm not actively doing it, but I do keep up my AMS and my NWA, the National Weather Association seal.
This is indeed the hurricane season right now, isn't it?
My goodness, yes, and with a hurricane coming up, with what it's done down in Florida and along the eastern seaboard, it's really, really pretty incredible. We have so much going on all around, and it's hard to. We need a flow chart for all the crises that are going on.
A lot of people think it's all global warming. I think it's cycles.
I do, too, and I think that there may be some man-made, but I don't think it's the kind of man-made contribution that they're trying to blame it on, like all of us who are just trying to survive. I think they should perhaps look at what's being sprayed in the skies to see if there's anything coming out there that might be kind of accelerating a fire situation. And also, the management of the forestry and cleaning up the things that need to be cleaned up as the years go by is also something to be considered. But there's so many things, and I'm certainly not an expert on that. But when you want to claim that like climate change is such a big threat and puts us all at risk under the Emergency Use Act and all of these mandates that could come as a result of that, and control, when it's a ghost in the dark, we don't see it. But I think one of the most interesting things I've seen on that is the original owner of the Weather Channel, founder, rather, and that was John Coleman, who gave a wonderful presentation on that, and he kind of put everything in its place.
I interviewed him years ago on Coast to Coast. Great guy.
He is, or was, yes. May he rest in peace.
Genius, too.
Mm-hmm. Very, very smart. I met him at a Weather Channel alumni get-together not too long ago, before he passed away, several years ago.
I mean, those were the pioneers. They saw the power of digital and streaming and television, and they magnified it. They knew how to use it. Yes,
and there was Ted Turner.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, who put the live newscast. And when I worked for CNN as a news anchor, it was when news was news, before everything became so opinionated. And then we had the live satellites all over the world and the Gulf War. And, amazing to be on the cutting edge of that when all of these things were developing. It makes you appreciate what you have. and the advances that we've made. And you just wish you could give everybody that kind of a look back into that with hands-on, like you and I lived through.
I think Ted Turner is a genius.
He really, really was, and it was just amazing to be there at that time.
Let's go to the calls as they line up for you. We'll start by going to Brian in Indiana. Welcome to the show, east of the Rockies. Hello, Brian.
Hey, George, good morning. How are you?
Great. I hear I'm going to see you in Columbus, Ohio.
Yes, sir. You sure enough are. I can't wait till we get there.
It's coming up.
Hey, you know it, man. Hopefully it'll sell out. It's going to be a good time, so everybody needs to get their tickets as soon as you can. Cheryl, how are you this evening?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm good. It's an honor to talk to you. Hey, listen, I have a story that involves you and George.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it happened. It's kind of funny. George, last time Nick Pope was on the air, I'd gotten up, in the afternoon, getting ready to go to work, and my wife was on the webpage, Chris, and she was like, hey, Nick's going to be on the show, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah. She goes, well, who is this Cheryl Jones lady? I said, well, that's George's wife. And she's like, no way. She goes, I didn't know George was married. I'm like, yeah, she's an investigative reporter.
I didn't know I was either.
I didn't either.
And she goes, well, man, she is beautiful. I said, yeah, I know. She's a very beautiful lady. I said, but, and she goes, George is a lucky man. And I said, yeah, but not as lucky as me. So a couple of minutes later, I told her, I said, nah, George's not married. Him and Cheryl are just good friends, and she is an investigative reporter that comes on the show. That's pretty good. I've been waiting to tell you that. But hey, listen, real quick. You were talking about the government's wanting to take over or have total and intimate domain on anything that's found or that's already been found in this. So I got to thinking, I watched The Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if you watched that at all or have been watching it. Over the years, they've made a lot of progress, and next season is going to be even better. But I was wondering about the Bigelow Aerospace or any kind of private entities like that are into this stuff. Have you heard of anything or off the record anything about they having anything that the government wants to get a hold of? Or I'm sure they're probably in cahoots with the government if they do have stuff. And
well, let me jump in for a little bit on that, Cheryl. We had Robert Bigelow on the program several months ago as he gave out awards to people for writing and research, but I don't think he has any information about UFOs or anything like that we don't already know about. He's interested in it. He's funded many cases and investigations. He's funded rocketry because he wants to build a space hotel, but he's not holding anything back from us.
And one thing that's in favor of that, too, is he's been very public about his involvement in his research. And I think what the representative was talking about, Congressman Burchett, was all of these private contracts that are no bid, that are secret, that are not made basically public. And since they're private contractors, you can't submit a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act, and that's how they get away with what's called a black budget, because it's basically unaccountable. But you're right, Robert Bigelow has been very public about it, and so that's a whole different ballgame.
Next up, Mike in Livermore, California is with us. Welcome to the program. Hey, Mike.
Hey, George. How you doing?
How you doing out that way? Haven't heard from you in a while.
Yeah, I know. Not since I was in the accident.
You okay now?
Physically, yeah. I'm still dealing with the loss of my buddy, Tuzak.
Yeah, that's not easy.
I'm used to losing dogs. They don't live as long as us, but when they go in that way, it's sudden and everything else, and it's just kind of hard to deal with.
Yeah,
I miss him. I constantly turn around and where is he? But hey, great guest tonight. A couple of things. The congressman you were talking to, boy, he is fantastic. Out of Tennessee, you say. Wonder how long has he been there, and how long will he last with that kind of attitude? But you had mentioned that Matt Gaetz, which I'm kind of on the fence with him. I mean, he had some trouble a while back, but that could all have been manufactured. But the other one you mentioned was Leah. Is that the I'm going to guess an Eastern Bloc country or something? She has a heavy, thick accent, blonde woman.
Blonde. On this oversight committee, there's Jarrett Muskowicz, there's Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, Eric Burleson, and Andy Ogles. Neither of those are blonde women. And then, of course, Tim Burchett. So I don't know really who you're referring to. I'm sorry about that.
Any idea how long Tim has been in office?
Oh, 5 years in Congress. 5 years in Congress, but he was mayor of Knoxville for many years before that as well, so he's been around.
How cool is that? Yeah, 5 years in Congress, that's not long.
It's not that long, and so that's why he said on that one point when we were talking about the stimulus bill of 2020 where President Trump had signed that, and it went kind of under the radar. Nobody really realized it at that time until it came out later with the mandate of that report being submitted to Congress and going public 6 months later, which was June of 2021, which we had on the program with Don Schmidt and Gary Heseltine, a detective from the UK, and Don Schmidt, the Roswell investigator. So he wasn't really involved in this issue then, but he did say that he's really been interested in UFOs since he was a child. He's always been interested in Roswell and fascinated with the Goddard Space Center. So really it was kind of a natural for him to eventually evolve into a situation where he really felt like he had a driving passion to do something.
Let's go to one of your champions, Thomas in La Jolla, California. Hey, Tom, go ahead.
Hi, George. When Brian called in and said you were married to Cheryl Jones, I was thinking about Ted Turner and Jane Fonda. That would be one of the marital unions that would be history. But Cheryl, I thank you for your research and just a great interview with the legislator tonight. I have a comment and then a question. Recently, I picked up Coast to Coast guest David Wilcox, wrote a book called Ascension Mysteries.
Yes.
And it's basically about disclosure, and he interviews quite a few whistleblowers on the whole UFO topic, that type of thing. And he presents a very different picture. I don't know if it's true or not, but it may not be true, but it just may be the way things are. But he claims he interviews people like Corey Goode or Pete Peterson, Bill Ryan, Kerry Cassidy, and on and on. And he heavily footnotes his book. And basically what David Wilcox is contending is that we are already in contact. There are elements on planet Earth, governments, and basically transnational corporations that are in direct contact with interstellar communities. And I mean, one whistleblower said to David Wilcox, there are 67 extraterrestrial races that are in contact with planet Earth. And we've been given anti-gravity technology, biomedical technology, portal technology. He describes in detail the portals at Pine Gap, S4 in Nevada, which would be Area 51, Long Island, that type of thing, where you transport directly through portals. And when I finished the book, Cheryl, I said, what is one to make of this? What is one to make of this? Or is this the real secret that there is interstellar communication and particular interstellar trade going on between certain elements on planet Earth and the extraterrestrials? And he also talks about humans are already traveling to extraterrestrial bases on the moon and on Mars. So I'm going to ask you, maybe you know something that I don't know or the audience doesn't know, but maybe it's more serious than we think that we're already in contact.
Cheryl, we may be in contact, but I don't think we're willfully trading with them or anything like that. Do you?
Well, anything any of us would think or would believe would really just be a guess, because we have no actual way of proving it. But I've heard Corey Goode and David Wilcox and their stories, and Terry Cassidy, and they do make compelling points. And so it does leave you to say, what do we make of it? It's just something that I guess we just have to wait and see, because we can say what we think post disclosure, what knowing the truth behind all of these really is, and who's telling the truth and who isn't, and is this the next step that you were referring to, or isn't it? It's really amazing. We live in amazing times. Who knows how much more real disclosure is going to be taking place? But one thing's for sure, we're sure getting a fast lesson on conditioning.
And who knows just how involved we are with them, Cheryl.
Exactly. And the secret, I think it all goes back to, regardless of how wonderful the technology, the reverse engineering, whatever there may be, free energy, peace on earth, whatever, that may be available. But if it's controlled by entities that, are not, are more on the evil side as far as rather than the good side, we'll never see the benefit of it. And I think there's so many power struggles going on with good versus evil, and it's all for control, I think. That's what it appears to me. And who am I? I'm just a termite on a tree. But in my conversation with Representative Burchett, I asked about the good and evil. We didn't have a lot of time to go into it, but definitely, if I interview him again, I want to dig down on that a little bit more when we have another session. But there is something to it, and he's open to talking about all of that stuff.
Cheryl Jones is with us. Her website is linked up at coasttocoastam.com, and she spells her name with 2 L's. Never got to the bottom of that story, Cheryl.
It's very deep. You just add another L, and it's that simple. Actually, on my original birth certificate, I think I was only born once, but it is spelled with 2 L's. And when I was just a youngster in elementary school, and all of my friends had really simple names like Ann and Betty and Lois, I just thought, I am really working too hard. I have to write out this whole big, long name. It was Sherrill. And I just thought, how much time could I save if I could shorten a few letters, as many times as I write my name? Being the analyst that I was.
We're going to come back in a moment with Cheryl Jones and take final phone calls, so don't touch your dial right here on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast to Coast. George Norrie back with Cheryl Jones. Cheryl will be back with us again the end of September, the last Thursday of October, and the last Thursday of November, and then in December as well. Hard to believe how fast this year's going by, Cheryl, huh?
Yes, I think somebody's speeding up time. I feel like a time traveler. It's going so fast.
Do you feel that, not that you're old by any means, but I mean, the older we get, time seems to go by quicker?
I think so, because it's all in perspective. Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all in perspective, and it goes by, and it's like I mentioned before the citizen hearing, and I failed to say that, this is the 10th year anniversary. How appropriate to have this kind of a hearing 10 years later, with the citizen hearing. It was a mock congressional hearing with panelists, they were former congressional members.
That was a Stephen Greer project, wasn't it?
No, that was a Steve Bassett citizen hearing on disclosure. Stephen Greer was the Disclosure Project. And he had another big presentation just a few days before this latest hearing, where he did the same thing and brought in really, really, really great witnesses. But he did that also. His first one was back in 2001, where he did quite a gathering of key witnesses from around the world.
And I remember right before 9/11, they were going to do. He was together with Bassett. They were going to do something, and then 9/11 popped up.
Seems like in so many cases things have been planned that have been big, and something big happened. Well, we can't say that that hasn't happened to us in the recent years with COVID. Look how many things were drastically changed with all that. And there is talk and some reporting that these mandates are coming back mid-September. So there's supposed to be something that's going to implement that around that time. We'll see. I hope that doesn't happen.
Let's go to the phones. Bill in Los Angeles to get us started. Hey, Bill, go ahead.
How you doing, George?
Good.
Cheryl, I'm a former newspaper reporter, Columbia J School, 86, and I have to say I really enjoyed your interview with Congressman Burchett. When I first dialed it in, I thought I had the wrong channel because I rarely hear such a spirited interview and back and forth on Coast to Coast, so that was welcome. But I do want to play devil's advocate. As much as I appreciated the congressman's anti-government sentiment, and I agree with it about the wasted money and the control and the censorship, he said something that kind of got my interest, especially since you guys mentioned Robert Bigelow, whom I happened to talk to on George's show about a year and a half ago. And I asked Mr. Bigelow directly, when are we going to see direct evidence of crash retrieval information from either contractors or the government? And he was hedging his bets. And I've come to the conclusion since then that there's a good reason for that. And Congressman Burchett kind of tipped it off when he said that national security, in his opinion, was an excuse to keep people in the dark. But then he admitted simultaneously that anybody with this super amazing propulsion technology could conquer our civilization. Pardon?
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Oh, and what did you say in the last part of your comment there? You said that the national, you felt it might be an excuse to keep people in the dark. And what did you say after that?
But that anybody who has this propulsion system that is supposedly being hidden could conquer our civilization. And I think that's the point, that, whether or not you agree with the Pentagon, all their motivations, they don't want this information to fall into the hands of our enemies. And there is a legitimate national security issue, somewhere in here. And Mr. Bigelow is a good example of somebody who doesn't want to cross that line. So I think there is something worth keeping, in the Pentagon's opinion, worth keeping a secret for national security.
Well, I think you've got a great point there, and thanks for that observation. Obviously, we have to be concerned about national security, but where is that? Where's the right point, the right wall in there between keeping something that needs to be kept for national security, for the safety of our nation, versus some private contractors being able to just, cost overrun and, get all kinds of millions and billions of dollars without any accountability. So I think it's a fine line, and who knows how that really could be, brought into a situation with accountability where it needs to be. And you'd have to have all of your defense and private contractors to be very trustworthy and honest people. And I guess that's the real issue. In one of my questions, I asked Congressman Burchett, who vets the vetters? And that's a really deep question, because we just take for granted that people are vetted, even for political positions. And, we don't know. We're not there. We're not in the middle of the room. We're not a fly on the wall. We just have to take what we have and try to figure out if we think it's true or not, and we could be wrong.
Let's go west of the Rockies. Richard's with us in the state of California. Richard, go ahead.
Hey, George, love your show.
Thank you, sir.
I got a question for Cheryl.
All right.
I got a question for your guest. It's about remote viewing.
Uh-huh.
I'm type of like an amateur, and I was wondering if I could remote view you right now.
Uh-oh. I don't know if you'd want to do that or not.
Hope you have your pajamas on, Cheryl. Jeez.
15 till 5 almost my time, or 10 till 5.
But remote viewing is a very powerful tool. We just had a guest on last night, Michelle Freed, talking about remote viewing. And she has interviewed most of the government former remote viewers. It's a powerful tool. Have you ever tried it, Cheryl?
No, I haven't, but I've been very interested in it, and I've attempted to go to some classes, and something has always come up. And by the way, I didn't mean to say that you couldn't remote. Sure, you can try, but I doubt that you could get through to my brain at this hour in the morning.
Are you wearing pink slippers?
No.
Well, that's a remote viewing that didn't work.
You failed. That's an F.
We're remote viewing the wrong people. Cornelius in Louisiana, welcome to the show. Hi, Cornelius.
I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole there, George.
Or 11.
Or 11. There you go, George.
Well,
Look,
the danger
Cheryl,
there was confused with
go ahead, Cheryl.
Wouldn't it be Cornelius?
Yeah, Cheryl, I used to be a military police officer with the top secret clearance. I used to guard different people, places, and things. And through the MP community and the air police and the security police, shore patrol and all like that, I've heard different things, especially at these nuclear bases and tactical nuclear sites where these UFOs and stuff have come in from. But I did call Tim Burgett after the hearing and asked him to come on Coast to Coast with either George Norrie or George Knapp, and you got him. So I hope and pray, and he tried to call me back, but I missed him because my phone was on the charger. So I did get a call from his office and everything. And while y'all were on the show, I called his office in Knoxville, Maryville, and the national office. And I hope Coast to Coast listeners and callers will call his office too, other than email him or try to mail him, even though it's Labor Day weekend, because we need to get on top of this. Now, Cheryl, see, you were bringing out the good thing from the Bible, because I'm the God Guns and Gold man, the Bible Bullets and Beans man. I think that these are demons. So Satan has his ships and the Savior has his ships. And I think they be shooting them down and stuff, and that's how we get this crash retrieval and stuff, because we have nothing that can knock these things down. And I want to say to the bill, Communist China and Russia has encountered these things too at their nuclear bases and stuff. George Knapp brought that out in a skiff after the congressional hearing and stuff. And I hope you'll get David Grush on, either George Knapp, George Norrie, or you, Miss Cheryl, get David Grush, because they're trying to destroy him because he witnessed something during wartime, so he has PTSD. So we need to get him on Coast. But God bless you, George. God bless you, Cheryl. Have a happy and blessed Labor Day weekend.
You know, we're blessed, Cheryl, to have George Knapp with us as his investigative reporting. He is by far the best UFO investigator, I think, in the country.
Absolutely. I've always marveled at the fact that he has been with KLAS, the station in Vegas, for all of his broadcasting, or, you know, I don't know if he worked for someone else prior to, but for such a long time, and that he was in a situation there where it was in the area of Area 51, so that's one good thing, and so obviously it would be a natural story, and that his management has allowed him all of these years to cover that story back when it was a taboo story. And
that's right.
Tinfoil hat, not like it is now. Because in other environments that I've worked in quite a few local stations around the country, I don't believe they would have allowed that.
He was at the congressional hearings. He was sitting right behind the whistleblowers.
I know, and this attorney was sitting behind David Grush, and that was it was like he was like a lamppost on the side of him.
Joe in Monterey, California is with us. Thanks for holding, Joe.
Thanks, George. To answer some of those questions that everybody has, they're not interested in trade. It's more like trafficking. Okay, that's number one. Number two, those remarkable healings that people get from ETs. Well, if you're going to sell a commodity, you might want to have a way of fixing your commodity, like a medical dictionary about how to heal or clean up and fix your commodity, your animals. We have them in veterinarians. They do the same thing. Okay. Another thing, as far as being armed to the teeth with extraterrestrial technology, maybe we all are. Remember, George, they have the button on our technology. They could turn it on and turn it off. So they have everybody with a gun to each other's head, and they don't have to threaten us. All they have to do is say, well, we're going to let this person over here maybe use this weapon, because they could turn it on and turn it off.
Well, that's absolutely true. Cheryl, are you familiar with the work of Dr. David Jacobs?
Yes, somewhat. I haven't interviewed him yet, but I would love to.
He believes that the UFO presence is very nefarious, very evil. There's something wrong. What do you think of that?
Well, that's the whole battle there, and that's certainly a debate. And I had asked Congressman Burchett about the good versus evil, and even as Joseph referred to, about the healings. Of course, again, limited time when you're doing these kinds of things. But all of this, good versus evil, the alien healing, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that there's not evil on the other side as well. Maybe it's just like, humans here on our planet. We have good people and we have very evil people. Maybe it's that.
Would you seriously go on a trip in a flying saucer if they came down and asked you to go with them?
It would depend on my mood swing at the moment. I might say, well, this is something I haven't done, and I'd like to try it and just see what's going on out there. I guess I would probably make the decision based on whether I felt that they were good or evil.
Or would they bring you back?
Well, that's the whole thing. I don't know if I'd have any negotiation power or any standing to negotiate. I don't know that they would actually give you a choice. They either want you or they don't. I might, but then again, I might not.
I'd go to Mars with them as long as I come back.
Well, how do you know? They get you there and they say,
You don't. It's like that Twilight Zone movie, To Serve Man.
Right. It's like you get there and you say, well, no, but you promised you'd take me back. Well,
it's a cookbook. Cheryl, we'll see you the end of September. For Dan Galante, Tom Danheiser, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladouceur, Stephanie Smith, Chris Borrows, Tim Banal, George Knapp,